being wrong becomes being harmful to the health, the wealth, and the security of our citizens.
Well, you're friends with the fancy persuasion. Don't admit that it's part of the scheme. But I can't help but have my suspicion. 'Cause I ain't quite as dumb as I seem. And you said you was never intending to break up our scene in this way.
In 1968, men first left the Earth for the Moon. Millions of people watched their journey on television.
And when the 12th largest company in the world controls the most awesome goddamn propaganda force in the whole godless world, who knows what shit will be peddled for truth on this network?
With its Earthrise photograph and reading of Genesis, Apollo 8 has struck a universal chord, moving the human spirit all across the world.
I think the high point of my space career was Apollo 8. I say that because we were the first 3 people to leave the Earth, to go to the moon, to see the moon, the far side, but also the first people to see the Earth as it really is. See the Earth as it really is, as it really is, as it really is.
All I'm saying is, when I look at all of it, when I look at the photographic evidence, or I look at the fact that we haven't been back since 1972, when I look at the fact that no humans except the Apollo astronauts have ever gone through the Van Allen radiation belt, the fact that no one's even done a flyby around the moon since then, it seems weird to me. When I look at the press conference and I see Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins nervous and weird and obviously like being deceptive after they came back.
You can see on the back of his shirt a couple of upticks on either side where you would expect wires to come in on either side of that harness. They're often portraying that this is live. Of course, these things are fully choreographed and edited in advance to make sure that there's nothing too obvious.
Looks CGI to me.
Gives away that this is a suspension in front of a blue screen hoax. The moon landing stopped in 1972 and we haven't been back.
Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business.
Everybody loves their Hollywood films, and we bitch and complain when special effects aren't up to par with what we like and what we want to be fooled by special effects. And when we can spot fakery, oh, we hate that shit. And think about how many movies people watch in a year. Now, why can't people figure out what NASA's doing? Their older work totally exposes them, especially since we've been so trained to spot fakery. Now let's look at these moon missions. We successfully landed on the moon 6 times. Look at that, Apollo 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, from 69 to 72. I mean, we just went to the moon and back like if it was no big deal. We ran our little experiments and we just came back home. Now, in 2022, it's going to be 50 years since the last successful Apollo mission when we went and walked on the moon. Is anybody going to start questioning it then? And it's really going to be 50 years that it's going to lapse and we're still going to be fooled by this bullshit? Now NASA is talking about going to Mars, and I can't imagine them actually fucking doing that. That is so ludicrous. But they might be forced in a corner and have to fake that, because people might start figuring this shit out. We never landed on the moon. NASA's complete fraud. They are literally doing nothing. And I don't know what's gonna happen if the public starts actually talking about this shit, because our brains have got to start working at some point. This shit is absolutely absurd.
But man, you're never gonna get any truth from us. We'll tell you anything you want to hear. We lie like hell. We'll tell you any shit you want to hear.
On October 4th, 1957, Russia orbits the first man-made satellite in history, Sputnik. To many Americans, it's a shocking defeat, a Pearl Harbor in space.
It is quite possible that an aggressor nation that dominates space will then dominate the world. We just can't let that happen.
They consider the control of space around the Earth very much like, shall we say, the great maritime powers considered the control of the seas in the 16th to the 18th century. And they say if we want to control this planet, we have to control the space around it. We have to control the space around it. Control the space around it.
Dr. Wernher von Braun is America's leading rocket scientist, a German engineer who created the V-2 rocket for Hitler in World War II. He now works for the U.S. Army. For years, von Braun has dreamed of exploring space. Thanks to the Russians, he'll get the chance. 9 months after Sputnik, President Eisenhower creates the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA. NASA announces Project Mercury, a program to put an American in space.
These, ladies and gentlemen, are the nation's Mercury astronauts.
The 7 Mercury astronauts become instant heroes, Cold War warriors, ready to battle communism in space. Future celebrities like Alan Shepard and John Glenn are the public face of America's space program.
We deal in illusions, man. None of it is true.
Station Houston on 2, we are ready to begin the change of command event.
All right, well, everyone, welcome on board the International Space Station. Ground team and Thomas that actually got us out the door for that EVA to be successful. In addition, we also accomplished a spacewalk. Getting a repair done on an external MDM. That MDM failed and we had it repaired within 3 days. Another amazing event by our teams. In addition, Expedition 51 Thomas was able to grapple the Cygnus vehicle, and we unloaded thousands of pounds of cargo and reloaded it with trash during the time frame.
Dirty laundry actually gets incinerated in the atmosphere.
And we have accomplished an incredible amount of scientific research during the time of Expedition 51, including my favorite, the osteomics investigation. The European grip and grasp and Mars experiments, U.S.-Russian fluid shifts investigation.
And like every few days, you have to get urine in tanks from the Russians, hook it into our system.
Wait, they don't need their own?
No, they actually throw theirs away.
So it's been an incredible time frame for our scientific investigations as well. We are, of course, going to miss Oleg and Toma. They are exceptional astronauts. They are exceptional astronauts in every sense of the word. But mostly, we're going to miss their sense of humor and camaraderie. And now, today, I hand over to Fyodor Yurchikhin, the only guy I've flown 3 times with. And so, welcome to your command for Expedition 52, Fyodor.
Thank you very much, Peggy. Thank you very, very much. And it's an honor for me, again, stay here. 2 times honor for me. We continued our great program. The greatest, for me, it's the greatest program in the world.
But you people sit there day after day, night after night, all ages, colors, creeds. We're all you know. You're beginning to believe the illusions we're spinning here. You're beginning to think that the tube is reality and that your own lives are unreal. You do whatever the tube tells you. You dress like the tube. You eat like the tube. You raise your children like the tube. You even think like the tube. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion.
When we come into the world, we come in as an empty vessel. You don't know anything, you've got no information. And here you are, this empty vessel, this empty glass. And all of a sudden, you come into the world, and the second you get into the world, you get filled up with information. From who? Everyone and everything all around you. So pretty soon, you are a factor, a result of this information. And so why do you think the way you think? Why does anybody think the way they think? Because of the information that's been stored in the files of your mind. Your mind is nothing more than a big old file cabinet. It stores information. And so literally, the only thing you can think is what's in the files of your mind. And the only thing that's in the files of your mind is what you learned, what you were told, the information that's in there. You cannot pull out a file of a file cabinet that's not there.
Many people are concerned about Antarctica's 24 hours of daylight. People on the ball Earth side are coming out saying the 24 hours of daylight debunks flat Earth. Now the people on the flat Earth side are sort of wondering how to respond to this, I believe. And that's what this little video is about. My main points I'll make in a minute. But first, let's look at Ushuaia in the southern tip of South America, using the ball Earth terms, using the word southern there. Ushuaia is the so-called southernmost city in the world. It's actually further from the equator, significantly further from the equator than where I live, just south of Ann Arbor. It's actually significantly further from the equator than I am, but it's roughly a similar daylight pattern to what I have. I think they get about an hour. Yeah, they get about an hour more daylight on the summer solstice and an hour less at the winter solstice. So the point here is that Antarctica is sort of like NASA. Purportedly, only a few people have access to that part of the world, just like only a few people have access to the information of NASA. When information is like that and it's not verifiable by you and it's only verifiable by a few people, it's by definition non-scientific information because it's not empirical. There may be a few people here and there in NASA or that through government agencies that have been to Antarctica that will tell you, oh, they've seen something in the NASA data or in the Antarctica daylight patterns, so therefore it's empirical. But that is what the definition of scientific work is not. To be empirical means that anybody can verify direct observation if they just simply have the means to. But of course, this is what NASA information and 24 hours of daylight in Antarctica information is not. So the point here is, how can anybody on either side, flat Earth or ball Earth, do anything with any information about Antarctica? It's like we're all talking about unicorns. We're all talking about something that we can't see. So the Antarctica issue really is out of the picture as far as if you're trying to prove the world is round, is a sphere, or if you're trying to prove it's flat. Ushuaia is really the last place any of us can verify daylight patterns, and those fit right in to the rest of the world. Then all of a sudden we're supposed to believe just because some government agencies send us some video of Antarctica's. Now we are all told about airline flight, the Antarctica Airlines flight out of Australia that supposedly could be taken to try to verify what's going on in Antarctica. That of course won't work, even if those flights are real. And you really can get on a plane in Australia and they will fly you over a bunch of snow. You're not flying the plane. You don't know exactly the routes it's taken. If it just sticks along the edge of Antarctica, or if there's a bigger patch of ice in Antarctica that the plane just flies around in that part. These are all unknowns. Nobody knows any of this. So unfortunately the Antarctica issue isn't going to help either side in this flat versus sphere Earth debate. So we're able to go to the so-called North Pole and see the sun go around in a circle just precisely as the flat Earth model stipulates. But how convenient, nobody can, for all practical purposes, go to Antarctica to verify that the same thing happens there. So the lack of verifiability prohibits this from being an object of debate. And of course, everybody in the flat Earth community is thinking how convenient this is, because we're all thinking we go to Antarctica and we're not going to see 24 hours of sunlight. So it's very convenient for the ball Earth philosophy that things have worked out this way. See, a lot of people get really angry when you start excluding things from the conversation because they are theory, they're theoretical. A lot of people get really mad about that. When people have propaganda to push, they love theory, because with theory you can prove absolutely anything. But with direct observation, you only can prove what is directly observed. That often will involve some work sometimes to find out exactly what you're observing. So a lot of people won't like this video. But what are we supposed to do? Say, oh, let's allow completely theoretical information that nobody can verify for all practical purposes, except for a couple of unknown government people around the world. Yeah, let's let that information into our debate and our whole philosophy of our lives about who we are and where we come from, what kind of earth we come from, and if it's describable in terms of the Bible's creation story in Genesis 1 through 3, or are we going to involve the non-empirical, professional, scientific creation story of the Big Bang and the Big Bang singularity, a theoretical construct? Is that going to dictate what the philosophy we create to observe ourselves through? So yeah, so what are we supposed to do? So if you don't like that I'm claiming that this is non-empirical information we're not going to include, what else am I supposed to do? You know, the only way you can know something is with direct observation, something about the world, that is. Otherwise, it can be tricked and faked, and people lie. When people have agendas and motives, they act weird and they lie through their teeth, and people know all the tricks on how to do that.
Bringing entertainment to thousands of people. Through its magic, we are able to enjoy a combination of the radio, motion pictures, and the stage, right in the comfort of our own homes, simply by pushing a button and turning a dial. These cells with their electrical charges are scanned by a stream of electrons, completing 30 pictures a second. Compare that crude picture with these of today, and you can judge for yourself how far along the road to perfection television has traveled.
Most people still today think that all entertainment to do with movies, drama, is therefore nothing more than their entertainment. It never ever was that case.
Of course, television can't perform such miracles as this, yet. But perhaps there's no harm wishing that it could.
The greatest social messages are promoted through movies and drama, high drama, through the fixation of emotive sequences, emotional sequences, not logical, factual sequences, but pushing points across in an emotional way which register and fix in the mind. So emotional content is very, very important, rather than going through an actual discussion or an argument using logic and facts. There's no debate. And when you're being downloaded through fiction, your guard is down, the sensor part of your brain is not in action. It isn't saying, yes, I agree with this, I disagree with that, as you would in a debate or a lecture. You're actually in an alpha state, being completely downloaded with new ideas.
Throughout history, social engineers have refined techniques designed to control large populations.
About 100 years ago, this big organization with many branches, they wanted to rule the world basically using Britain as a nucleus of a system, an embryo, which also was going to be joined with the US under the Anglo-American establishment, wrote about the kind of culture and the changes of culture over a 100-year period that they would actually design, implement, and bring in. And H.G. Wells talked about it too. He talked about arenas. He says arenas could be put up across the world for sports, for instance. Now at that time, sports was something that children, school children were into. Adults became adults and got onto adult things. So it was unimaginable at the time that people could actually believe that there was even a need for adult sports and entertainment, never mind having arenas built across the world. But he said we can do this, and foist basically a sports culture for the males. Using a tribal system, we're all tribal to an extent. That's why we even bother to vote for a tribal leader. This is well understood. That's why we're supplied with these leaders. And because the average man was to become more disengaged from his own destiny as the expert class arose, it was decided that the males would get their outlet basically, gradually becoming helpless as males through sports. Therefore they'd have a tribal team they could identify with, they could cheer them on as though they were winning. In their own personal lives, they were getting nowhere. They were getting disenfranchised in a sense as experts took over decision making for them in all kinds of fields. So this was psychology at use, planned before they even implemented the sports. When radio came along, of course, they used that to the maximum. Sports for the men, soaps basically for the women, and then in came television, as I say, with its alpha state, its hypnotic state. And sure enough, around the 1960s, really, 50s and 60s, it took off. It really took off. And men became glued on Saturday nights to the sports shows. A culture industry, which is called by its own the culture industry. The Soviet Union had a department called the culture industry. Their actors and directors were called the cultural leaders, because they would, like a computer, people are like computers, all you have to do is keep giving them new updates every so often, and you can change an entire country or a nation or a block of nations who are all getting the same upgrades at the same time along certain paths. Today we call it political correctness. Most people want to belong to their peer group. They want to be the same as everyone else when it comes to opinions. In fact, they judge their own personal sanity by bouncing ideas off their neighbors and friends who will answer back and agree on these same topics in kind. It doesn't matter if the topics or what you're given are facts or utter nonsense, as long as everyone agrees at the same time. You'll say, well, I'm sane, and your friends will all agree because they've had the same information given to them.
But they've been programmed, and I'm sad because I know that it's hard for people like that to take an interest, a serious interest in world affairs, to take a serious interest in what their elected officials are doing. And they're not going to be really inclined to study or discover the deception that's being used against them. And so I'm sad because I see all of that in a flash in my mind as being an indication of how easy it is for the masses to be manipulated.